The dirt airstrip outside Cutler County, Kansas, was not much to look at. There was a windsock that had faded from red to pink, a single fuel truck with a dented tank, and a hangar with a tin roof that rattled every time a storm rolled across the plains. This was where Captain Mara Voss had flown crop dusters for the last 6 years, and this was where the local farmers had started calling her farm pilot, half as a joke and half as a way of putting her in her place. She never corrected them. She simply kept flying. Every morning before sunrise, Mara walked out to her yellow air tractor, checked the fuel, checked the hopper, and lifted off into a sky that belonged only to her. She flew low over wheat fields and soybean rows, turning tight circles at the end of each pass, guiding chemical spray in perfect lines that farmers said saved their crops better than anyone else in 3 counties. She was good at her job. She was better than good, but nobody asked why a woman with her precision, her instincts, her calm hands under pressure, had ended up dusting fields instead of doing something bigger. The truth was that Mara had not left the Air Force by choice. 6 years earlier, she had been part of an experimental fighter integration program, one of only 4 pilots selected for a project that never appeared in any public record. She had been assigned the call sign Blackhawk, flying wing for a small, elite unit testing systems that were years ahead of anything in service. Then came the accident. A training exercise over restricted airspace had gone wrong in ways nobody could explain. 2 aircraft lost all communication and navigation power for nearly 11 minutes. 1 pilot did not make it home. Mara did, but barely, guiding a powerless jet down through cloud cover using nothing but memory and instinct. The official report blamed pilot error. It never mentioned the strange readings her instruments had picked up in the seconds before the blackout, the way every screen in her cockpit had flickered with the same 3 letters before going dark. Nobody believed her when she tried to explain it. Within a month, she was quietly reassigned, and within a year, she had resigned entirely, unwilling to fight a system that had already decided she was the problem. She told herself she was done with all of it. She built a small life in Cutler County, took over her uncle's crop dusting business after he retired, and let the sky above the wheat fields replace the sky she used to know. It was smaller, slower, safer. She told herself that was enough. Then, on a Tuesday morning in late September, 3 black SUVs turned off the county road and rolled slowly onto her airstrip. Mara was checking her fuel line when she heard the engines. She stood up, wiped her hands on her jeans, and watched as 6 people in dark jackets stepped out, followed by a man she recognized instantly, even though 6 years had passed. Colonel Reyes had been her flight instructor once, sharp-eyed and quiet, the kind of officer who never raised his voice because he never needed to. He looked older now, tired in a way that training exercises did not usually cause. "Captain Voss," he said, using a rank she had not heard attached to her name in years. "It's just Mara now," she said. "What is this about?" Reyes did not waste time on pleasantries. He explained that 2 F-22 Raptors had gone dark during a classified exercise over restricted airspace 2 nights earlier. No distress call, no radar return. No wreckage found, just silence, sudden and complete, as though the aircraft had simply stopped existing. Search teams had been combing the area since, finding nothing. Mara felt something cold settle in her stomach. "And you're telling me this because—" Reyes reached into his jacket and pulled out a small tablet. He turned it toward her and played a short audio clip, 12 seconds of static and garbled radio noise. Buried inside it, barely audible, was a voice reading off a call sign before the transmission cut to silence. "Blackhawk crew." Mara stared at the screen. Her call sign. A call sign that had not been active anywhere in the military for 6 years. A call sign that existed in exactly 1 classified file that was supposed to have been sealed after her resignation. "That's not possible," she said quietly. "We know," Reyes said. "That's why I'm here." He explained that the task force investigating the incident had cross-referenced every known instance of that call sign and found only 1 match. Her old file, the one detailing the accident that ended her career, the one nobody had ever fully explained. Whatever had happened to those 2 Raptors matched, almost exactly, the readings recorded in her cockpit 6 years earlier. The same flicker before the blackout, the same 11 minutes of silence. Except this time, 2 pilots were still out there somewhere, and the window to find them alive was closing fast. "You're the only person who has ever experienced this and survived," Reyes said. "I need you to help me understand what happened to you, so we can figure out what's happening to them." Mara looked past him at her yellow crop duster, sitting quiet and familiar on the dirt strip, and then back at the 3 black SUVs that had brought her old life crashing back into her new one. Every instinct told her to say no. She had built walls around the accident, around the years of being doubted, around the quiet shame of being blamed for something she never understood. Reopening that door meant reliving all of it in front of people who might, once again, decide she was the problem. "I can't," she said. "I'm not that pilot anymore." Reyes did not argue. He simply said, "There are 2 people up there right now who might not make it home unless someone figures this out. I know I have no right to ask you this, but I'm asking anyway." Mara thought about the pilot who had not made it home 6 years ago, about the years she had spent wondering if she could have done something differently, about the silence that had followed her ever since. She thought about 2 more pilots out there right now, staring into the same silence she remembered too well. "Give me an hour," she said. That evening, Mara sat across from Reyes and a small group of engineers in a hastily assembled command trailer parked at the edge of her airstrip. They walked her through everything they knew, which was very little. The Raptors had been flying a joint exercise testing new communication systems when both aircraft lost all power simultaneously, despite being separated by nearly 40 miles. No debris had been found, no emergency beacons had activated. It was as though the planes, and the men flying them, had simply been switched off. Mara asked to see her old file, the one from her own accident. Reyes hesitated, then handed it over. She read through pages she had never been allowed to see before, technical readouts showing the exact moment her systems failed, the specific frequency spike that had preceded the blackout, and, buried in a footnote nobody had ever explained to her, a note that the same frequency had been detected once before, years earlier, during an unrelated test flight that had also ended in a still unexplained loss of control. "This has happened before," Mara said, "long before me." "We think so," one of the engineers admitted. "But we've never had a survivor talk us through what it actually feels like from the inside. Every other case ended in silence, permanently." Mara closed her eyes for a moment, remembering. The strange flicker across her instrument panel, the sudden and total loss of every system at once, as though her aircraft had simply forgotten how to function. The 11 minutes of falling through cloud cover with no power, no radio, nothing but her own hands, and the memory of every simulator run she had ever completed. "I didn't fix it," she said slowly. "I just flew through it. I used dead reckoning, old instincts, muscle memory. I got low enough that the terrain gave me visual reference again, and somewhere around minute 9, my systems just came back online, like nothing had happened." 9 minutes, Reyes repeated. "The Raptors have already passed that mark, nearly 40 hours ago." The room went quiet. Mara understood what that meant. If her experience was any guide, the pilots should have regained control long ago. The fact that they had not meant something about this event was different, worse, or perhaps simply larger than anything that had happened to her. "I want to fly," Mara said. Reyes studied her for a long moment. "You haven't flown anything faster than a crop duster in 6 years. "Then you'd better find me a good instructor," she said, "because I'm the only person who's ever come back from that silence, and I'm not letting 2 more pilots become another sealed file nobody talks about." What followed was the fastest and strangest week of Mara's life. She was flown to a joint airbase she was not allowed to name even to herself, given a rushed but thorough refresher course on modern fighter systems, and placed into a 2-seat trainer alongside Reyes for a series of flights meant to reacquaint her body with speeds and instincts she had not touched in 6 years. It came back faster than she expected. Her hands remembered even when her mind doubted. By the 4th day, instructors who had questioned why a crop duster pilot was in their program stopped questioning and started watching her with quiet respect instead. On the 7th day, search teams finally located a faint thermal signature deep in a canyon region inside the restricted zone, consistent with 2 aircraft resting powerless but intact on the ground. No survivors had been confirmed. Communication attempts had failed. The area was considered too unstable, electromagnetically, for a standard rescue approach. Every system that flew into that canyon risked losing power exactly the way the Raptors had. Every system except, potentially, Mara's memory of flying without one. She volunteered to fly escort into the corridor, not because she trusted the aircraft to survive the anomaly, but because she trusted herself to fly through the silence if it happened again. Reyes fought the decision for exactly 1 day before running out of better options. The flight into the canyon was the quietest 40 minutes of Mara's life. She watched her instruments carefully, waiting for the flicker she remembered, the first sign of the world going dark. It came just past the canyon's mouth, sudden and total, every screen dying at once, the engine note changing as backup systems failed to catch. For a moment, the old fear rushed back, sharp and familiar. Then her hands took over. She flew the same way she had flown 6 years earlier, using the shape of the canyon walls, the angle of the fading light, and a memory of terrain maps she had studied 100 times that week. She held her altitude by feel, adjusted for wind by instinct, and did not let herself think about anything except the next 30 seconds, then the next 30 after that. Somewhere in the silence, she thought she understood something the engineers had missed. This was not a malfunction. It was closer to a kind of test, a filter that only let through pilots who could function without depending entirely on their machines. 9 minutes in, her systems flickered back to life. 10 minutes in, she spotted both Raptors resting on a wide stone shelf below, their canopies intact, their pilots visible, and moving inside the cockpits, alive but clearly shaken, after nearly 2 days trapped in silence with failing life support and no way to call for help. Mara guided rescue teams in behind her, refusing to leave the airspace until both pilots were confirmed stable and lifted out safely. When she finally landed back at the base, hands trembling, flight suit soaked through, Reyes was waiting on the tarmac. He did not say anything at first. He simply reached out and shook her hand, the way he used to after a good training flight, years ago, before everything had gone wrong. In the weeks that followed, the task force quietly rewrote the record of what had happened to Mara 6 years earlier, finally acknowledging what she had always known, that the accident had not been her fault, that the same unexplained phenomenon had likely caused it, and that her survival, once dismissed as luck, had in fact been skill nobody had bothered to properly study. She was offered full reinstatement, her original rank restored, first choice of assignment anywhere in the program. She thought about it for a long time. In the end, Mara turned the offer down, not because she did not want to fly fast aircraft again, but because she had realized something important during those quiet minutes in the canyon. She did not need a title or a call sign to know what she was capable of. She had already proven it to herself, twice now, in the exact moments when everything else had gone dark and only her own hands remained. She asked for one thing instead. She asked that the truth be written down properly, filed correctly, and made available to any future pilot who might one day need to understand what she now understood, that sometimes the most advanced systems in the world were not enough, and that the pilots who trained themselves to function without them were the ones who came home. Reyes agreed. The file was corrected. Her name was cleared, fully and permanently, for anyone who ever cared to look. Then Mara flew home to Cutler County, back to her yellow crop duster, back to the dirt strip and the tin-roofed hangar that rattled in the wind. The locals still called her farm pilot. She still did not correct them. But every so often now, a formation of fighters passed high overhead on a training run through the open Kansas sky, and for just a moment, before continuing on their way, they dipped their wings,